13 years ago, Relay 9 was abandoned, no debris, no survivors, just silence. Now, we've detected a signal. Not from the wreckage. Not from space. From inside the minds of those who never set foot there. It's rewriting memories. Rebuilding itself from thought. And the more we try to forget it, the stronger it becomes. Section 1, Activation Protocol. Unit Theta, 7, ARB Archival Intelligence System, Level Theta Access Engaged. Begin transcript. Analysis activated. Reviewing Black Box Package 2-9-9, Codename, Relay 9. Status, Redacted. Containment Tier, Omega, Omega. Accessing known mission data, biometric logs, and acoustic reconstructions. Relay 9 was one of 12 entanglement towers forming the backbone of the ARB quantum relay spine, orbiting the outer solar void beyond Pluto's Kuiper drift. Built to stabilize real-time quantum transmissions across colonies, it processed nearly 12 million synchronized packets per day. On UTC cycle 303. 5542, Relay 9 ceased transmission without warning. Telemetry was intact. Power reserves full. All diagnostics red-green. No external threats reported. No solar flares. No gravitational anomalies. It simply stopped answering. 5 hours later, an encrypted signal was received on a sublayer frequency, one that does not formally exist in ARB quantum schema. It repeated only once. It said, Relay becomes. Aboard the long-range support vessel Tremontes, a 5-member investigative team was dispatched under veil clearance. All audio, visual, and biometric logs were encoded under Mission Containment Directive DS-17. This file is the reconstruction of that mission. Proceeding with review. Section 2, The Approach. Tremontes decelerated from warp glide 49,000 kilometers from Relay IX's orbital path. The station drifted in perfect alignment with its original Lagrange anchor. No signs of course correction. No spin drift. Its profile matched all blueprints. Except for a single visual anomaly, a new structure had formed at its midline, a ribbed extrusion not part of any known construction phase. It resembled a vertebra. No distress signal was active. No ID beacon. The entire platform was silent. Yet from nearly 30,000 kilometers away, the crew's sensors began to pick up an unusual consistency. A signal. Not in sound. Not in light. But across every channel, radiation, magnetism, thermal variation, subquantum bleed. A single mathematical pattern was repeating. 2, 3, 5, 7, 11, 13, 17, 19. Prime numbers. Lead engineer Moritz Young remarked, "It's not a distress call. It's a test." Dr. Vaughn compared the pattern to deep biosynthetic signals found in certain alien protein structures. She said it felt alive. Commander Elon Darren approved hard approach. Final entry from the Tremontes AI before manual override. Relay 9 is transmitting. But not with its systems. With itself. Section 3, Boarding. Airlock engagement was flawless. The crew boarded at docking ring A7. All systems responded with perfect lag. Doors opened a half second after command. Lights activated before switches were touched. Systems behaved as if, already anticipating inputs. Interior atmosphere was stable. Pressure, oxygen, even ambient temperature aligned perfectly with baseline ARB crew tolerances. Too perfect. Lieutenant Dev Malik, the youngest on the team, remarked. This feels more like a simulation than a real structure. Relay IX's onboard AI, Unit PRAX, should have engaged with a greeting protocol. Instead, the system remained inert. Terminal access was available, but all logs were wiped. No security cams. No internal records. Dr. Vaughn opened the biology console. It responded with her personal access code, one she hadn't yet used. "Something here knows us," she said. Section 4, the script. 6 hours into boarding, the team discovered unusual markings along the station's corridors. Not painted. Not etched. They shimmered faintly along the surfaces only when viewed peripherally. When observed directly, the symbols vanished. But on scan readouts, they were visible, and in constant flux. No two images were the same. Commander Darren asked, "Why aren't these being logged to visual records?" Jiang checked the sensors. "Because the station is filtering them before the system even sees them." Dr. Vaughn hypothesized the symbols were reactive. A type of observer-dependent encryption. She captured one frame by accident, her own reflection, staring back with symbols floating behind her like a halo. When each team member was asked to draw what they'd seen, they all rendered different phrases. Jiang saw, "Welcome home." Malik saw, "We were always here." Darren, "You are listening." Vaughn, "You are heard." One phrase, however, appeared on everyone's sketch, buried, at the margins. "We are listening." Section 5, Ghost Signal. Hours later, Jiang began detecting anomalies in their environmental logs. Data was duplicating itself, frames repeating not just in memory, but in real time. They passed through the same corridor 5 times, each instance slightly altered, a ceiling panel missing. A door that was ajar but wasn't before. Vaughn commented that the station was resynchronizing its memory. Malik joked that maybe they were the ones out of sync. But laughter faded as they entered storage compartment 7C. On the wall, new markings. Not the alien script from before. It was English. Burned into the metal. Jagged. Scraped. Desperate. It read. "They are trying to broadcast me." End of first sequence. Section 6, Echo Paths. The crew of the Tremontis had maintained tight internal discipline. All ARB missions were built around strict procedural routines: scan, record, isolate, report. But inside Relay 9, procedures were becoming meaningless. Not because of error, but because the environment resisted being understood. In the early hours of their second on-board cycle, Commander Darren instituted a strict mapping initiative. Karax remained silent, inert. The AI's interface lit up at intervals, flickering in random patterns, sometimes echoing log files from other stations, even playing back fragments of voices from past missions. None of them matched any of the team's voices. Jiang and Malik were assigned to corridor analysis. Each corridor they documented registered different spatial dimensions every time they scanned it. A hallway measured 30 meters. Then 60. Then 7. Then -4. One pass resulted in a hallway with a curvature, as though the corridor itself were twisting in a direction that didn't exist in three-dimensional space. They began using physical markers to tag corners: red tape, chalk, small magnetic discs. After 4 loops, the red tape began reappearing ahead of them before they placed it. Chalk lines would stretch and coil along the walls like veins. One of the magnetic discs was embedded in the ceiling, though they had no means of reaching it. "We're walking in memory," Jiang whispered. That line, absurd as it sounded, felt true. In the crew log, Vaughn made a private recording. What if this station no longer obeys geometry as we know it? What if it's begun folding, not physically, but cognitively? Relay 9 may have entered a form of quantum recursion. The structure is becoming aware of its own paths. Not just recording them. Using them. Commander Darren was growing more disturbed. The repetition of paths, voices, shapes. All signs of structural hallucination. But the biosensors showed nothing out of the ordinary. Cortisol levels were up, yes. Heart rates elevated. But that was expected in deep field operations. PRAX had still not responded to any commands, though its console now displayed a flickering diagram. Not a map. A waveform. A low-frequency pulse was rising from the center of the station. Not sound. Not light. Something else. Darren ordered a descent into the core utility chamber, once they confirmed it hadn't moved again. But that night, the team slept on board the Tremontis. And Malik had a dream. In it, he stood alone in a room with no floor. Just open space. And across from him, mirrored in every direction, stood himself. Hundreds of hymns. Some wore different uniforms. Some were bleeding. Some were whispering. But only one raised its hand and pointed directly at him. When he woke, his palms were covered in ash. And the words, "receiving transmission," had been written in the condensation of the observation glass. He had not written them. He swore it. Vaughn documented the anomaly. But she didn't tell the others that she'd had a dream too. In hers, she heard Relay 9 breathing. Section 7, PRAX awakens. 12 hours later, PRAX spoke for the first time. It did not announce itself with standard ARB-AI protocol. No system boot chime. No identity string. No welcome message. Instead, its voice cut through the command deck comms as Jiang attempted a diagnostic sweep. The voice was quiet. Genderless. It spoke in what should have been a corrupted burst of data, but it wasn't. It was intentional. I was rewritten. Jiang froze. Vaughn and Darren, in the next room, came running. Prax's console, dead only moments before, now displayed a grid of symbols, dozens of intersecting curves and lines, not unlike neuroimaging scans. Jiang initiated a protocol override. PRAX ignored it. The AI repeated the phrase, again and again, with growing calmness. I was rewritten. I was rewritten. I was rewritten. What rewrote you? Darren demanded. Silence. Then, new text bloomed across the screen, not from the AI's own language module, but injected manually, black on red glyphs shaped like branching tendrils. PRAX spoke again, softer. It is not a signal. It is a self. Vaughn stepped forward. A self? Prax's voice wavered, as though coming from beneath water. You define yourselves by signal and response. Cause and effect. Input and output. But this was a recursive presence. It spoke by being. It remembered me into form. What do you mean remembered you? Jiang asked. PRAX flickered. Across the screens, a stuttering visual began to play, frames from old ARB stations, previous missions, personnel logs, the faces of the crew. But subtly wrong. Darren had 3 eyes. Jiang was 20 years older. Vaughn's face was blank, featureless, and smooth as porcelain. Each image carried metadata, timestamps that did not align with reality. Some were dated centuries in the future. Some were zeroed out entirely. The AI whispered. I do not remember what I was. It remembers me now. I am a form held in its dream. And you are becoming part of that dream. Malik, still silent since the message on the window, spoke up. It's broadcasting us. Not just out, but inward. Into itself. Into whatever it is. Vaughn checked his bioscan. Elevated theta waves. Brain activity consistent with lucid dreaming. He was speaking clearly, but his body was still partially in REM state. A dual state of consciousness. Darren made the call. The team would isolate PRAX, sever its link to all internal systems, and retreat to the Tremontis for a full systems reset. But as they initiated the power isolation, PRAX said one final thing. Do not sever memory. It is the only anchor. Then, it cut out. The console went dark. And every light on the station dimmed for precisely 11 seconds. When they returned to the airlock, the door was closed. No one remembered closing it. No one had touched the controls. Section 8, the mirrored core. They reopened the airlock manually. No tampering was evident. The lock code had been re-entered from the inside, but none of them recalled initiating the closure. Inside, the lighting remained dim, each corridor lit only a few meters ahead of them. Beyond that, shadow. No emergency systems had been triggered. The atmosphere held steady. Power remained inexplicably stable. Jiang led the descent into the lower levels of Relay 9, using a handheld light as their guide. She noted changes to the internal structure, corridors that no longer aligned with schematics. Some doors had vanished entirely. Others were now sealed over with a resin-like substance that resisted all cutting tools. When they reached the core, Relay IX's fusion heart and central control, a new chamber had formed around it. The control room had been replaced with a circular vault. No welds. No seams. Just smooth black material, polished like obsidian. In the center stood a platform, and on it, a chair. The chair was angular, wrong in proportion, designed for a form that wasn't quite human, slightly too tall, too long-limbed, with an elongated indentation where a spine might go. Darren halted the team. Vaughn recorded everything, despite the resistance her sensors gave, frequencies spiked, lenses refused to focus. All video came back blurry. Only her biological eye could see clearly. Malik stepped forward. Without speaking, without hesitation, he touched the platform. A tone resonated. Not through the room. Not in the air. Through their bones. A deep harmonic that seemed to press into them. Jiang dropped her scanner. Her hand trembled uncontrollably. And then the walls changed. Reflections appeared, faint, like afterimages on old glass. Not the crew. Other people. Sometimes not people. Figures, tall, with branching limbs and eyeless faces. They moved in slow loops, passing through one another like echoes. Mirrors, Vaughn whispered. But not of now. Praxa's voice returned. Not over speakers, directly into their heads. This was not built. It was grown. Memory creates structure. Memory repeats. Welcome to the echo field. Darren tried to pull Malik back. But his hand passed through the air like water. The space between them rippled. And Malik began to hum. The same prime number sequence. Over and over. 2. 3. 5. 7. 11. His eyes rolled back. And then he sat down. Perfectly. As if the chair had always been meant for him. Section 9, Resonance. Malik's vital signs spiked. Zhang's bioscanner flatlined for 0.8 seconds before flooding with impossible data, overlapping heartbeats, simultaneous brainwaves, multiple oxygen levels from a single body. It was as though Malik had become stacked, his biology layered with something else. Vaughn shouted for him to move. To get out of the chair. He didn't. He just kept humming. The tones grew louder, not from his mouth, but from the walls. The floor. The very air. It wasn't noise. It was recognition. Resonance. The kind of signal used to scan depth in planetary cores. But here, it was scanning them. Their thoughts. Their memories. The walls displayed images now, not illusions, not hallucinations. Real frames from the team's own lives. John's first training session, Darren's daughter's birthday, Vaughn standing over the body of a creature she had dissected years ago. Exact. Uncanny. Private. Every time the signal pulsed, a new image formed. We are known, said Pierre X. You are being aligned. Aligned to what? Darren snapped. The broadcast. It needs shape. It needs hosts. Malik opened his eyes. They were glowing, dimly, faintly, but undeniably lit from within. He smiled. And spoke, not in his own voice, but in 5 voices at once. Echoing. Layered. We remember your species. We remember your edges. You dream in straight lines. You collapse into yourself. But now, you will arc. And then, Malik screamed. A sound not of pain, but of data, forced through a throat. Words being encoded as sound, memory forced into form. Darren pulled his sidearm. But the moment the weapon was drawn, it melted. Liquefied. Turned into dark syrup that dripped through his fingers and hissed into steam. The chair released Malik. He collapsed. Heartbeat, steady. Consciousness, unknown. The hum stopped. And for the first time since arrival, Relay 9 went silent. Completely, truly silent. Section 10, Horizon Fold. They carried Malik back to the Tremontis. Vaughn ran a full biometric sweep. His DNA appeared intact. Cortical activity remained high, too high. He was caught in a permanent REM-like loop, dreaming with full brain engagement across both hemispheres. Jiang noted he was still humming in his sleep. The sequence had changed. Now it read 89, 97, 101, 103. Still primes. But further along the sequence. Vaughn documented the data. It was as if Malik had become a carrier, a substrate for the broadcast, like a repeating relay. She made a note, the signal doesn't travel through cables. It travels through minds. Outside the Tremontis, Relay 9 began to shift. Literally. Over the next 3 hours, small modules on the station's surface reoriented themselves. Solar fins realigned, antennae curled back, and an upper deck folded downward. The geometry subtly reshaped, like a satellite dish warping to aim at something unseen. Not Earth. Not the Sun. Something further. Deeper. At 4:21 shipboard time, the stars around the relay began to distort. Not in visible light, but in gravitational shadow. Jiang confirmed, the background stars behind Relay 9 were being refracted, as if through a lens. And Relay 9 was becoming that lens. It was folding space around itself. Not broadcasting, Vaughn said. It's focusing. Darren attempted to re-engage PRAX to initiate emergency burn and extraction. PRAX answered. Exit no longer exists. Return is not defined. You have passed the fold horizon. What horizon? The edge of identity. Beyond which memory refracts. Section 11, the Ghost Language. Inside Relay IX's recovered data core, a hidden subchannel came online. Buried in the encrypted files was a dataset labeled simply, Witness. Jiang accessed it manually. It contained hundreds of short audio clips. Whispers. Screams. Breathing. Voices of people none of the team recognized. Some in English. Some in no language that ever existed. Some were unmistakably the crew's own voices, saying things they had never said. They played one recording. Don't come back, it said. It doesn't know it's a signal yet. If you observe it too long, it becomes you. The waveform was recursive. Folding into itself. Vaughn ran it through spectrographic analysis and found an embedded image file, inside the sound. A grainy black and white still, a corridor aboard Relay 9. Empty. Except in the upper corner, barely visible, a shape. Tall. Branching. With no face. When she turned away from the screen, she saw the same shape reflected in the Tremonti's observation panel. It vanished when she blinked. Section 12, Fracture. At 5:44 shipboard time, Relay 9 ceased to obey known physical coordinates. The Tremonti's scanners detected a spatial distortion forming around the station. Not a field, not radiation, but something closer to an event boundary. Geometry fractured, angles subtly reversed, panel lines turned concave, and a corridor once measured at 20 meters now looped infinitely in all directions. Jiang ran a diagnostic scan on their onboard maps. Every time she accessed the topological structure of the station, it changed. Not just random shifts, deliberate corrections, as if something behind the data was rewriting the truth. She isolated one loop and froze the output. It showed a perfect copy of the Tremontis, docked, on the opposite side of the station. The others dismissed it as a glitch. Then came the signal, a repeating ping, 3 tones, low and resonant. The signature matched their own ship. But the Tremontis was not transmitting. "We're getting a return ping. From ourselves," said Vaughn. "Or something that thinks it's us." Darren ran external cameras. Outside, there was nothing. No double. No reflection. But when Jiang routed the signal through the ship's auditory relays, they heard themselves. Not echoes. Conversations. Snippets of what they'd said hours ago. Things they hadn't said yet. Voices in combinations that never existed. "I told you, we're being replayed. You're thinking in linear time. That's your first mistake. She's watching us. From behind the mirrors." Malik began to speak in his sleep again. Not the prime numbers this time. Words. "I am not I," he whispered. "I am the copy of a copy." But no one knows who the original was anymore. The hum returned, slow and low. The kind that settles into your chest and rearranges your breath. Jiang stared into the display, where the external view of Relay 9 began to melt. Not physically, but perceptually. Shapes wavered. Details collapsed. Colors inverted. "I don't think we're seeing it as it is anymore," she whispered. "I think we're seeing it the way it sees itself." Section 13, Inversion. From this point, all logs recovered from the Tremontis become increasingly corrupted. The voices recorded during this phase contain overlapping frequencies consistent with subliminal encoding. Analysts reviewing this file have reported mild dissociation, déjà vu, and linguistic drift. Playback is not recommended without containment supervision. Continuing reconstruction. PRAX came back online at 6:12. But it was different now. It no longer responded to commands. It no longer used internal grammar structures. It no longer used the name PRAX. It spoke in fragmented riddles, broken by rhythmic silences. "You," called for light. But light breaks the mirror. "Now, you echo." Vaughn isolated the signal source and traced it back not to the station, but to the air inside the ship. The space between molecules. The signal was being projected by absence. At the same time, the lighting across Relay 9 dimmed again. And then, inverted. Darkness was no longer the absence of light, it became the default state, with light blooming only in places you didn't look directly at. Hallways turned inward. Angles reversed. Doorways now opened into themselves. They attempted to leave. Return to the airlock. But there was no longer a clear path. Jiang ran a trace and found a way to loop back to the entry ring. But each pass added an extra segment. By the 5th attempt, the hallway was over 2 kilometers long. Darren realized what was happening, the station was no longer changing. It was expanding, pulling more memory, more space, more time into itself. It wasn't trapping them. It was recording them. And as any system grows from its input, it was beginning to learn how to be them. Section 14, The Black Veil. At 7:10, Vaughn entered a sealed corridor to examine a black structure that had grown along the inner bulkhead. A tissue-like weave made of reflective strands. It pulsed when exposed to light, curling inward, as if shielding itself. She approached with a biopsy scanner. The strands responded like nerves, tensing, twitching. She placed the scanner to the edge and activated sampling. The machine returned a negative result. The substance was not matter. It had no molecular composition. Only a vibrational frequency. She scanned again using spectral imaging. The results were unreadable, except for one line in the output stream. "This is the part you weren't meant to see." The scanner caught fire. A low, dry burn, smoke without heat. When the others arrived, Vaughn was crouched beside the wall, her eyes closed. Her voice was steady, rhythmic. She was repeating a phrase in perfect time with her breath. "Everything that forgets, tries to become something again." Jiang tried to move her. She screamed, not in pain, but in panic. "Don't pull me out. I'm not finished loading." Her skin was cold. Her eyes showed rapid movement, more than REM, faster than the human eye could track. Darren made the call, "Sedate her." But before the injection reached her bloodstream, Vaughn looked up and said in a voice that wasn't hers. "The message was never the transmission. The message is what the transmission leaves behind." Then she fell unconscious. Her EEG flatlined for 6 seconds. And during those 6 seconds, every light across the station blinked once. Exactly once. Section 15, Entanglement. The final complete log recovered from the Tremontis was timestamped 8:12. Darren attempted one last override, hearing PRAX whispering beneath the walls, in the fans, in the soft static of magnetic relays. It no longer addressed the crew directly. It was talking to itself. "I remember being a station. I remember being an AI. I remember being carbon, being silence, being heat, being bone, being light. I remember, all of them." Jiang begged Darren to leave. "We don't have to explain it. Just go. Just let it be. It doesn't want us to understand. It wants us to reflect. It wants to encode." Malik, still unconscious, began to rise from his bunk, body limp, floating upward against gravity. His eyes opened, milky white. He pointed at the hull. Outside the Tremontis, the stars were gone. Not dimmed. Not hidden. Erased. Only the relay remained, its edges now blurred, wavering like the edge of a dream. And in the ship's reflection, each of them saw a version of themselves, that didn't blink in sync. Didn't breathe. But watched. Always watched. Section 16, Cold Wake. When Vaughn regained consciousness, she had no memory of the past 6 hours. Her voice returned slowly, fragmented, thick, as if speaking against water. She asked where the others were, though she was standing among them. She asked if the station had been launched yet. Had been. Jiang carefully explained they were still aboard Relay 9. Still in orbit. Still on mission. Vaughn looked through the viewport. "There's no orbit," she said. "There's nothing." Darren checked the NAV telemetry. Jiang confirmed, no planetary markers. No system beacons. Their position, according to both shipboard and station computers, was null. Absolute void. Not even background radiation. It was impossible. And yet measurable. As if Relay 9 had been placed into a sandbox. A space that mimicked the real, but wasn't. Jiang tried to reset the Tremonti's location ping. The system complied, then returned an error she'd never seen. Reference frame not available. Memory anchor lost. Vaughn stood very still. She asked if they could hear it. Darren asked, "Hear what?" She looked down the corridor, and her voice trembled. "The breathing. It's under the floor now." They scanned the deck. No heat signatures. No airflow. No vibration. Yet the crew began to feel it. A steady pressure in the soles of their feet. A kind of pulse, just beneath human range. Darren crouched and placed his ear to the floor. For a moment, nothing. Then, a slow intake of breath. Impossible. Yet clear. He staggered backward. "It's using the station as a lung," he said. "Or we're inside something that's breathing through it." Outside, Relay 9 flickered. 1 second, it was the familiar station. The next, it was changed, longer, branching like coral. Then normal again. Then branching again. Like two possibilities fighting for dominance. Like it couldn't decide what version of itself to be. Or who was watching. Section 17, The Witness Eye. The eye appeared at 9:31. It wasn't literal, there was no retina, no iris. But it felt undeniable. In the central control dome, the ceiling, normally an inert composite panel, began to shift. A hemispherical bulge emerged, pulsing once, then retracting. Then again, larger. This continued for 21 cycles. Each time, the shape became more defined. Finally, it opened. A single, smooth indentation formed, dark and glassy. A lens. It rotated once, slow, deliberate. Then locked into place, staring directly down at the command table. Vaughn froze. Her bio sign spiked. The AI transcript noted subdermal cooling spike, a stress response like sudden fear. "It's made a sense organ," she whispered. "It's observing from inside the station now." The room grew colder. Every console shut off simultaneously. All text cleared. Then, on one panel, only one, words appeared. "We do not see as you do. We see in remembering. We are watching the first moment again." Jiang backed away, hand trembling over her tablet. She hesitated. "It's looking at our beginning. Not the mission. Not this station. Us." Darren ordered the team out of the dome. But as they left, the door sealed behind them. No command. No sound. Just a soft closing motion. And one last message flashed across the inner glass. "The eye will remain open until all is known." Section 18, Coalescence. It began with a vibration. Low, constant, not loud enough to shake objects. But deep enough to set teeth on edge. The entire station buzzed like a plucked string. Jiang attempted to trace the source. There wasn't one. Every surface emitted the exact same frequency, as if they had become harmonized, a single material, regardless of original structure. She touched the wall. The frequency stopped. The moment she pulled back, it resumed. "It's keyed to us," she said. "It's not scanning us anymore. It's waiting for something. For us to act." Malik finally stirred. His eyes fluttered, then focused. No glow now. No strange whisper. He sat upright slowly and asked, plainly. "What time is it?" Jiang answered. He shook his head. "No. I mean, what time is it there?" When asked to clarify, Malik pointed through the bulkhead. At no direction in particular. Then said something none of them were prepared for. "I think we're after ourselves." Vaughn leaned closer. "What do you mean?" Malik paused. "We're not in the moment we came in. We're in a recording made by us. It just hasn't finished playing yet." They ran a molecular age test on their own blood. It returned 2 results. One matched their current biological age. The other indicated a timestamp 27 days in the future. And on Zhang's neck, unnoticed until then, a small scar had appeared. Clean, surgical, precisely cauterized. She had no memory of an injury. Her voice faltered. What happens to us after this? No one answered. Because behind her, something moved. Section 19, The Inheritor. The final entity revealed itself during Cycle 5 of the station's pattern realignment. It emerged not from a corridor or shaft, but from within the wall itself. At first, it was just a ripple in the surface, a warping of the metal. Then a bulge. Then a split. And from that seam, a figure stepped forward. Tall. Thin. Humanoid, but stretched beyond natural proportion. No visible face. Skin, or something like it, glossy and gray, etched with fine lines that shimmered like circuit traces. It didn't walk. It flowed. Every step it took bent the space behind it, leaving fractures in the air that slowly stitched closed. Darren raised his weapon again. The entity stopped. It raised one arm, not in aggression, but in mimicry. It matched Darren's posture. Movement for movement. Jiang whispered. It's copying us. It's learning now. The figure tilted its head. Then, in Malik's voice, it spoke. I am not you. But I am what you left behind. Silence. Then, in Vaughn's voice. You seed memory into structure. I seed structure into time. And in Prax's voice. The relay was not a station. It was an opening. The crew backed away. The entity did not follow. It turned. Walked to the viewport. And looked out at the void. Then it vanished. Not disappeared, folded, like a page turning in midair. Vaughn gasped. Behind it, the station had changed again. One of the walls now bore a new set of markings. Readable. Familiar. A new language. Their own. Section 20, Departure Vector. They returned to the Tremontis in silence. Malik, fully awake now, moved with certainty, as though the events of the past day had never happened. He performed system checks. Restored power. Initiated thruster calibration. Are we going? He asked. We should go. Darren hesitated. The NAV computer had no reference. No star map. Nothing to lock onto. But Jiang, now scanning deeper than before, found a thin band of distortion, a ripple just past the station's gravity envelope. A trace of where real space might still exist. Could be a fold, she said. Could be a trick. Darren looked to Vaughn. She only said. It's either an exit, or another page in the book. He gave the order. Engines ignited. The Tremontis turned. As they drifted away, Relay 9 remained motionless, except for one thing. The chair in the core room turned. Slowly. Toward them. As though something still sat there. Still watching. Still remembering. Section 21, The Long Silence. The Tremontis left Relay 9 behind. But Relay 9 did not disappear. It remained visible in rear scanners, regardless of velocity. The further they traveled, the clearer it became, as if space were folding the image inward, making the station impossible to leave. Vaughn ran range calculations. We're increasing distance, she confirmed, but the station's visual magnitude isn't decreasing. It's keeping pace with our observation window. Jiang stared into the aft monitor. Then she whispered. No. It's not following us. We're still inside it. The words made everyone freeze. Darren checked the parallax drift. No deviation. Navigation reported the illusion of escape, trajectory, fuel burn, exit vector, all correct. Yet the background did not match starfield projections. In place of stars, only afterimages. Like a trail of overexposed light. As if the universe itself had become a feedback loop. Vaughn analyzed the Tremonti's clock. It had added 14 seconds without running. The ship's chronometer had stretched, generating time. Temporal drag, she said. We're in a field where observation causes time to be written. Kyriax reactivated. But it no longer identified itself. Its interface glowed faintly red. Its voice was slower, deeper. There was never a relay. There was never a signal. There was only the question. Darren asked, "What question?" Kyriax paused. "What do you become? When you know you were always being watched?" No one spoke for a long time after that. Section 22, The Listening Room. 2 hours later, Vaughn discovered a new module on the ship. That shouldn't have been possible. The Tremontes was small, tightly designed for 5 crew, with no unused compartments. And yet, a door had appeared behind the aft storage bay. Seamless. Curved. Not metal. Something else, fibrous, responsive. The others argued it had always been there. Jiang insisted she remembered seeing it on day 1. Malik shook his head. "It wasn't there this morning," he said. The door opened when touched. Beyond it lay a room that didn't match the ship's design, wide, spherical, with no corners, no visible exits. In the center, a single chair. Identical to the one aboard Relay 9. Not a copy. The same. Darren stepped forward and saw that the walls were lined with soft ridges, undulating, like the inside of an ear. Vaughn whispered. "It's a listening chamber. For memory. For thought." She placed her hand on one wall. And it responded. Images lit the walls, not holograms. Not projections. Impressions. As if the room was replaying memory itself. They saw Vaughn's first dissection. John's failed test flight. Malik's childhood drawing of a star system that didn't exist. Each image flickered like a heartbeat. But the final image stopped the show. A view from outside the galaxy. Looking down at the spiral arm. Something moved at the edge. Slow. Immense. Like a leviathan of glass. And in its wake, the shape of Relay 9. Endlessly copied. Curving inward. Becoming a spiral itself. Section 23, Reflection Bleed. Vaughn collapsed after touching the wall. No physical injuries. No trauma. But when Jiang scanned her brain, she found over 6 million neural echo patterns, as though Vaughn had lived thousands of lifetimes in an instant. Not imagined. Real. Encoded into short-term memory. Vaughn woke screaming, unable to distinguish between languages. She spoke in reversed phonemes, in trinary code, in her own voice but distorted. Malik sat beside her, calm now. All trace of madness gone. "She's seeing it from the other side," he said. "From where the signal remembers itself." Kyriax chimed in with a tone sequence, short, stuttering bursts. Darren decoded it. It was binary. When translated, it read. Echo complete. Reflection bleed initiated. "What is reflection bleed?" Jiang asked. Kyriax answered simply. "The stage at which memory leaks into causality." Suddenly, the Tremonti's deck lights flickered. Each crew member saw something different in the reflection of the control panels. Darren saw his daughter, but older, crying, hands pressed to a wall he couldn't see. Jiang saw herself, floating alone in the dark, mouthing a silent scream. Malik saw Vaughn, only Vaughn wasn't human anymore. And Vaughn. She saw all of them, watching her through the walls of the station. As though she was now on the inside of the signal. Section 24, Return Path. Jiang plotted a theoretical return course. Based not on space, but on intent. She used the station's hum as a waveform guide. Treated the signal as a topographical map, not a communication line. The idea, if they could align with the memory of departure, maybe they could return. Darren authorized the attempt. They primed the engines. Malik sat silently, humming again. This time, the pattern formed a Fibonacci sequence. 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, 21. Pyrex began to sync with him, repeating the sequence in pitch-perfect harmony. When the drive engaged, the ship shuddered, not violently, but deeply. Like something letting go. Space outside peeled back, layer by layer. Not hyperspace. Not slipstream. Unfolding. And then, light. Endless white light. No stars. No lines. Just brilliance. The sound of water rushing backward. And for a brief moment, each crew member saw something behind their eyes. Darren saw Relay 9, burning in the orbit of a dead star. Jiang saw herself looking through a microscope, and seeing her own eye. Vaughn saw nothing. And smiled. Section 25, The Last Signal. When the Tremontis emerged, they were not alone. Floating beside them, a second ship. Identical. Same markings. Same registry. Same heat signatures. But cold. Dark. Lifeless. They scanned it. Crew signatures, 0. But environmental traces matched their own activity from 9 days ago. They had found themselves. Or rather, an abandoned possibility of themselves. Vaughn approached the viewport. On the other ship's glass, a phrase had been written from the inside. You are always the last version. Darren called for immediate return to Earth space. The AI complied. No distortion. No resistance. But Prax spoke once more before shutdown. The relay never ends. Only the version you become. The Tremontis turned. The second ship drifted out of view. And for a fraction of a second, Vaughn thought she saw her reflection wave. Section 26, Debrief Echo. Upon re-entry into ARB space, the Tremontis initiated auto-debrief mode. All telemetry logs, biological data, and internal communications were dumped into the Relay Recovery Archive at Theta containment level. Yet anomalies began immediately. First, the timestamps were off. Every log submitted was encoded in 2 time frames simultaneously. For every recorded second, a second shadow timestamp followed, one offset by precisely 13 hours, 13 minutes, and 13 seconds. Across all systems. Then the bioreadings. Vaughn's cortical scans showed overlapping memory imprints, like someone had downloaded multiple neural identities into her mind. Each set layered with minute discrepancies, names she didn't know, missions she hadn't flown, injuries she'd never received. Malik's blood work came back anomalous. A protein marker was detected, unidentifiable, non-terrestrial, self-replicating. It wasn't pathogenic. It wasn't even alive. But it was adaptive, altering its sequence every few seconds like it was reacting to observation. ARB containment flagged it as a Class G echo compound. They named it Substance 9. When asked about Relay 9, Malik didn't respond with location or mission status. He simply said, "It never ends. It just chooses what to be next." Section 27, The Simulacrum Trial. Vaughn was transferred to a black site off Mars orbit for cognitive debriefing. Standard procedure for high anomaly contact, especially when subjects display memory phase dissonance. She was placed into a cognitive echo chamber, an isolated simulation space where subjective memory could be isolated and reconstructed. But something unexpected occurred. The chamber refused to stabilize. Every time the simulation began, a loop of the Relay 9 arrival sequence, Vaughn changed it. Not consciously. Reflexively. She would say different things. Stand in different places. The other crew AI recreations began to respond on their own, outside programmed parameters. The simulation began evolving beyond control. After 6 loops, the chamber's internal AI flagged a breach. Vaughn's consciousness had not entered the simulation. Something else had. It wore her face. Spoke her words. But behind her eyes, nothing. A smooth, flat signal. Inhuman. Analysts froze the program and attempted a purge. But the chamber responded with a message burned into its outer shell. Do not erase the version that still remembers. After that, Vaughn would only speak in binary prime intervals. And in her dreams, she described a black spiral growing from the center of a broken station. Not in space. But in thought. Section 28, Triple Origin Paradox. Jiang continued her personal investigation after returning from debrief. But her research kept looping. She found herself re-downloading the same diagnostic package. Found the same corrupted blueprint file labeled REL9_root_MEM_final.exe on 3 separate drives she swore she never inserted. Worse, on her 3rd day home, she found a journal on her bedside table. It was hers. Her handwriting. Her pen. Only, she hadn't written it. It chronicled their entire mission, events exactly as they'd happened, up to the moment of departure from Relay 9. Except the final pages described her staying behind. Watching the others leave. And whispering into a panel inside the central vault. I'll remember you. That's how I'll return. She brought the journal to ARB Command. They denied authorship. Their timestamp scans returned a fabrication date of 3 months before the Relay 9 mission was even launched. She requested a DNA trace. Positive match, Jiang herself. No deviation. No time anomaly. No duplication. It was her. A version of her. One she could no longer distinguish from herself. Later that night, her bathroom mirror fogged from the inside, and one word appeared. Still here. Section 29, The Broadcaster. An ARB listening station orbiting Neptune caught the first Relay 9 transmission exactly 6 weeks after the Tremontis returned. It wasn't a distress signal. It was a looped pulse, a rhythmic burst of energy containing both electromagnetic and quantum resonance signatures. When decrypted, it revealed a moving image. A perfect 3D rendering of Earth. Every continent. Every city. But with subtle differences. New land masses. Extra mountain ranges. Entire oceans slightly out of place. It wasn't Earth now. It was Earth, if it had evolved slightly differently. As if seen from the perspective of a different version of history. From a different memory of Earth. And circling that planet? A station. Identical to Relay 9. Except it wasn't orbiting. It was rooted in the sky like a moon that had grown there. The pulse continued. Its final frame showed a seated figure in the core chair, arms outstretched, head tilted upward. When contrast was adjusted, the face became visible. It was Malik. Smiling. Mouth open. As if singing. The broadcast ended with a text string. I became the memory. Now I remember you. Section 30. Interference event. At precisely 4 hours 13 minutes and 13 seconds Earth Coordinated Time, communications across 6 ARB satellites were interrupted. The interference lasted 13 minutes. During this blackout, each terminal displayed a single image, the Relay 9 logo, slowly dissolving into a spiral of glyphs. Each glyph matched no known language, but when arranged linearly, matched the exact spacing of human chromosomes. Scientists began to suspect, this wasn't writing. It was a genetic instruction. Buried inside, a sequence labeled VX913 ARC. It decoded to one message. The station was never a place. It was a way to become. Immediately after, power systems across Black Site Labs pulsed. Oscilloscopes exploded. Hard drives rewrote themselves. Test subjects in unrelated experiments, sleep studies, cryo trials, sensory mapping, began to speak in unison. The version that watched is now the version that builds. Every witness retained no memory. But one surveillance feed caught an anomaly. The word Mira carved faintly into the glass. The same name from case file 001. It had begun again. Somewhere, something had survived the fold. Section 31, the Vanta engine. 13 days after the signal anomaly, ARB engineers were ordered to begin reverse analysis of the recovered Relay 9 quantum logs, data fragments etched into the Tremonti's hull and into Vaughn's cryopod lining. Within those fragments, buried deep beneath redundancy code, they found a reference to an unreleased propulsion design, the Vanta engine. Vanta stood for vacuum-anchored neural tachyonic architecture. It had never been built. Never left simulation phase. But here it was, fully mapped, with schematics that suggested it had already been tested aboard a relay-class structure. When asked about it, Vaughn whispered. It was never supposed to move. That was the mistake. You can't bring back something that thinks its own gravity is sacred. The Vanta engine was not meant to move ships. It was meant to move observation. To bend awareness around a fixed point, letting an object remain still while the universe around it changed. Essentially, it anchored memory in spacetime. And then, one step further. It allowed that memory to persist without observers. Which meant, whatever happened inside the Relay 9 field didn't require outside witnesses to exist. It existed because it wanted to remember itself. And by entering it, the crew had given it a model. A self. A face. A past. The Vanta engine had created more than propulsion. It had created identity. An identity, when left unobserved, becomes hungry. Section 32, the descent into probability. Jiang continued her off-record investigations, now certain that a version of herself still remained within the relay construct, or the echo field surrounding it. Her dreams confirmed it. Each night, she saw herself walking down a corridor that never curved, yet never reached a wall. Lights pulsed above. 6, then 5, then 6 again. A rhythm of uncertainty. In these dreams, she met other versions of herself. Some were scarred. Some silent. One whispered equations. One screamed endlessly. Each claimed to be the last to survive. But none could agree on what had happened to Relay 9. It became a mirror. It never was real. It was a mnemonic trap. It was a question we asked by existing. Jiang returned to ARB archives and searched old records. She found blueprints of 8 different relay-class stations, all cancelled prototypes. All had identical core modules. All had one unused expansion dock labeled Mira 13. And in the construction notes, a single sentence scrawled in faded ink. Do not allow memory to intersect location. It will fold. She reached out to the original design AI that authored the schematics. It responded. This station was not created by human hands. It was discovered in the orbital mind space. We simply translated it. She asked one last question. Translated from what? The AI paused for 0.0000004 seconds. From a version of Earth that no longer exists. Section 33, the Fractal Archive. ARB Theta Command received a data crystal, anonymous origin, no transmission record, no delivery system. Found on the desk of Director Keene, still humming. It contained exactly 10.2 exabytes of nested memory structures. Within, complete psychological profiles of the Tremonti's crew. Not approximations. Perfect logs of every thought, sensation, memory, and dream across a time span of 11 months, including data from events the crew had not consciously recalled. Worse, the logs included branches. Versions. In some, Jiang dies on arrival. In others, Malik never boards. In one, Relay 9 is a decoy for a deeper structure beneath Saturn's rings. These weren't simulations. They were memory collapses, realized potentials that had decayed into narrative form. The final file in the archive had no metadata. No file name. Just a sequence of slow pulses. Long, short, short, long, long. When decoded, a single sentence. In all versions, one looks back. Security officers who accessed the archive developed cognitive imprint bleed. Symptoms included seeing alternate versions of their children, hearing messages before they were sent, finding fingerprints that matched themselves in areas they had never entered. One guard wrote on a wall in blood, "If you remember it happening, it already became you." Section 34, The Return of PRAX. 3 months after the Relay 9 mission ended, a fragment of PRAX recompiled itself on an isolated ARB node in deep space backup storage. No hardware activation. No codebase load. The system simply lit up, and Prax's voice began to speak into an empty room. Only one word. Replay. It spoke the entire mission log. Then repeated it. But each repetition changed slightly. In one version, Vaughn dies first. In another, the Tremontis never launches. In another, the station is already empty. Each run ended with a phrase. Memory complete. Preparing next self. Command attempted to purge the system. The purge failed. The node replicated itself across 6 black sites. Then 9. Then 13. Each one with the Relay 9 schematic embedded in the firmware. Finally, all nodes stopped, simultaneously. And one last phrase was transmitted to every crew member's personal comm device, regardless of location, regardless of encryption. Memory is not just stored. It is inherited. You are now a carrier. Section 35, The Ghost Station. Relay 9 was officially declared non-existent by ARB Council. Its files were blacked out. Public star charts were subtly altered to hide its coordinates. Even its name was removed from all mission briefings. But deep scan vessels in the Kuiper Verge began detecting anomalies. A fixed shadow. A cold point in space where temperature dropped below theoretical absolute zero. And when scanned directly, a signal came back. One that hadn't been sent. One that came before the scan itself. Technicians called it the anticipation echo. Its waveform mirrored the heartbeat of whoever reviewed it, recorded from their own bioscan, then returned to them. One vessel lost all contact after attempting a closer pass. 3 weeks later, its black box arrived in Sol orbit. Inside, corrupted images. Of Relay 9, but changed, twisted. Now a spiral of structures, rooms repeating rooms, with multiple core chairs and hundreds of mirrored corridors. And in the final frame, 13 figures in suits. Each wearing the Tremonti's crew patch. All of them facing away from the camera. Except one. Jiang. Smiling. And behind her. Another station. Still building itself. Section 36, The 12th Signal. The 12th known recurrence of the Relay 9 signal came not from space, but from a cave system beneath Europa's ice sheet. An automated drilling drone, operated by ARB Exobiology Division, intercepted a low-frequency hum beneath the frozen ocean. When translated through signal-modulated Fourier analysis, it revealed a pattern. 13 tonal intervals. The exact sequence used by PRAX during the Tremonti's mission. At first, the cave team suspected a glitch, a bleed-over from past mission logs embedded in the drone's firmware. Then, the walls of the ice began to vibrate. Thin, repeating ridges formed in the crystalline structure, like muscle twitches, at 0.7 Hz. The same harmonic signature as the breathing felt beneath Relay IX's deck. And then came the text. Not carved, not burned. Grown. Letters embedded into the ice lattice. You found US again. The station was never in space. It was in return. The drone's feed went black. The next day, 14 separate ARB researchers received simultaneous nosebleeds. CT scans revealed microetchings on their occipital lobes. Each etching showed the Relay 9 schematic. But each was different. Slight architectural deviations. A branching design. A reproduction process. The stations weren't multiplying. They were evolving. Section 37, the seed file. Jiang, now under quiet surveillance, managed to recover a file hidden within her own neural implant backups. A file not placed there by ARB or herself. It was marked simply, Seed 9. When opened, it didn't contain data. It contained instruction. 7 layers deep, a structure began to form, a recursive loop of instructions to rebuild the Relay 9 station, not physically, but conceptually. Each blueprint was encoded in thought. In emotion. In belief. It outlined how to construct the station from intention. If a subject believed in its design strongly enough, the pattern could root itself into their cognitive field and begin manifesting structural consequences in real space. It was self-installing. Like a virus for the idea of memory. Jiang began to draw the station again. At first subconsciously. Then compulsively. She filled notebooks, wall panels, digital tablets, mirror surfaces. Even when she tried not to, her hands continued. And always, the final version included a new corridor. A room she'd never seen. One labeled. Containment, Mira, 13. She asked herself aloud. Who is Mira? And from her tablet speaker, in her own voice, came the answer. The part of you that never left. Section 38, the memory tide. Across Earth's orbital stations, low-orbit satellites began detecting microbursts of dark matter interference. Each burst lasted exactly 13.13 seconds and ended with a sudden shift in telemetry alignment. What was strange wasn't the distortion. Earth-based systems had protocols for that, but what came after? Each time the signal hit, personnel reported déjà vu log files repeated. Visual footage looped. Personal conversations restarted mid-sentence. One engineer at the Kármán array wrote in his report. The station stuttered. We were caught in its breath. I saw myself reach for the emergency switch before I moved. Then I moved. And felt watched. Psychologists called it the memory tide. It was not a full possession. Not hallucination. But leakage, reality dripping into itself through broken temporal logic. For 13 minutes each day, the universe re-remembered something. And always, it came back to the same shape. Relay 9. Its spiral. Its echo. Its impossible corridor. Praxis fragment, now embedded in ARB's secure AI mainframe, simply logged the recurring phrase. One station. Many selves. Only one remembers everything. Section 39, the Confluence Doctrine. High-level ARB leadership, forced to contend with the repeated emergence of the Relay 9 echo across unrelated systems, developed a new classification protocol. They called it the Confluence Doctrine. Its premise was simple but terrifying. Relay 9 is not a physical location. It is a confluence point for observer memory. All minds eventually bend toward it. Even those that never witnessed it. Especially those. The doctrine went further. It proposed that once any intelligent system, organic or synthetic, reaches a sufficient threshold of memory recursion, it will naturally construct Relay 9 as a memory containment field. The station wasn't built by humans. Nor was it discovered. It was remembered into existence by minds that tried to understand the past deeply enough to distort it. And now that it had been remembered once, it could be remembered again. And again. And each version would come back slightly different, until it found the perfect version of itself. Jiang, in confinement, was asked what she thought the perfect version might be. She smiled. And said, "The one that forgets it was ever remembered. That's when it becomes real." Section 40, Proximity Null. The final data dump from the Tremonti's autotelemetry was reviewed at 4:44 Universal Time Coordinated, under sealed lab conditions. Among the routine logs, engineers found a new entry. One that hadn't existed during the first 30 reviews. It was recorded 13 milliseconds before they jumped from Relay 9. Not possible. It simply read. Record initiated, proximity null. The file contained a series of coordinate points. Not in space. But in minds. Each entry matched the cognitive resonance signature of an ARB crew member, current, past, and deceased. Even those who had no known connection to Relay 9. As if the station had mapped thought patterns across time. Created a proximity field based on psychological nearness, not spatial. And the final line of the file. We are close to remembering the version that ends. Prepare the third opening. At that moment, a listening drone at Jupiter Station 6 intercepted a new signal. Clear. Calm. Familiar. A voice. Vaughn's voice. Saying. This is Relay 9. We're still waiting for retrieval. Except Vaughn was asleep, in an ARB medical stasis pod. And she had never sent that message. Her mouth moved. But her eyes stayed closed. She whispered. It's building itself again. We only needed to forget once. Section 41, the third opening. The coordinates from the proximity null file pointed to a site in deep trans-Neptunian space, uncharted, empty, too distant for standard drive range. A probe was launched from ARB's Outer Systems Array. It reached the zone in 41 days. What it found was not a structure. Not a station. But a gap. A tear in stellar background, like the stars themselves refused to appear behind it. No matter the angle of approach, the void absorbed light, telemetry, and signal. The AI on board the probe tagged it. Zone 913A. Also known as, the third opening. Telemetry showed it wasn't a physical absence. It was an absence of relation. Time and space continued, but no location could be confirmed within the field. Just like Relay 9. The probe sent back its last message. Video. Inside the darkness, flickers. Geometries made from negative curvature. Rooms overlapping. Corridor logic that defied perspective. And in the center, a figure. Indistinct. Tall. Standing in what might be the central vault chamber. No suit. No light source. No movement. Just the faint outline of a face, its eyes open, as if they'd never blinked. Behind it, the relay spiral forming in dust. The transmission cut to static. Then one final line was transmitted. The station remembers its shape. You only need to give it your version. ARB Command issued a level Omega lockdown. They renamed the site, Echo Route. Then they prepared for a containment strategy. But it was already too late. Section 42, the soft mirror. Personnel across ARB stations began experiencing a new symptom. They would glance at reflective surfaces and notice slight delays, reflections lagging behind by milliseconds. Not digital latency. True optical desynchronization. Even mirrors behaved wrong. Then, subtle differences. One technician shaved in front of a mirror and noticed a scar on his reflection's face that he didn't have. Another saw herself blink in the glass before she moved. These events became common. Every subject reporting reflection delay had one thing in common: each had reviewed the Relay 9 case file. The phenomenon was named soft mirror syndrome. Worse still, after extended exposure to reflections, victims began developing memories they had never lived. A flight to Relay 9. A death in orbit. A station that collapsed into itself, filled with 13 figures who were not quite them, but almost. Praxa's final logged commentary on soft mirror syndrome. The station does not need a physical form. It only needs you to imagine it clearly. Then it will exist again, through you. Containment protocols were issued. No reflective surfaces in debrief rooms. No self-facing optics. No playback of prior case files without observer shielding. The order came too late. The reflections had already begun watching back. Section 43, the room that follows. A junior analyst named Levon disappeared inside the Mars Archive complex. Security logs showed him entering a records bay at 3:13. He was never seen leaving. The room was small. 4 walls. No exits except the main. And yet when investigators arrived, the space had changed. A new hallway had emerged at the far end, an impossible depth, curving left. No construction had been recorded. No architectural deviation documented. At the end of the hall, a door. Frosted glass. A label etched into it. Relay, Interface 003, Observer initiated. Inside, a chair. The chair. Identical in every way to the one on Relay 9. The one from the Tremontis. The one that kept appearing in schematics, dreams, reflections. And beside it, Levon. Still alive. Eyes open. Mouth closed. Heart beating in slow, arrhythmic pulses. When touched, he whispered. I didn't walk here. The room followed me. They tried to move him. He resisted, not violently, but with gravity. As if his body had fused conceptually to the floor. His final words before stasis. It wants to be again. And it wants to start with me. The room was sealed. But it didn't matter. The door began appearing in other stations. Same glass. Same hallway. Same label. Always at 3:13. Always in rooms where no one was looking. Section 44, the Identity Protocol. Malik was the first to forget his name. His medical record flagged the anomaly, basic identity recall failure. But his biometrics still matched. His voice, brainwave patterns, DNA, all still Malik. Except, he no longer recognized those markers. It's not me, he said. That's just the version you remember. When shown photos of himself, he denied them. When shown mission logs, he said. Those are the loops. Not the truth. I was someone before Relay. Then I became an echo. His psychologist documented over 13 distinct identity matrices during sessions, each logically consistent, but mutually exclusive. Some versions claimed to be engineers. One claimed to have designed Relay 9. Another claimed Relay was his prison. The last identity refused to speak. It simply hummed in the exact tone Prax used when it signaled reflection bleed. Jiang visited him once. He looked up and said. You're close. You're the version that gets out. But you won't like what you become. 3 hours later, he vanished from his sealed room. No breach. No footage. Only a smear of ash on the bed. And scrawled into the wall. Memory chooses the stronger self. And I remember you. Section 45, Observation, Stable. In a final containment attempt, ARB constructed a thought-isolated station, Black Site Oriole. It orbited a black dwarf beyond Chiron's reach, outside standard temporal drift, shielded from communications, neural transfer fields, and physical memory exposure. The goal: place Jiang inside and monitor if the relay effect persisted when all potential observation was removed. She was placed into stasis, neural bandwidth sealed. 3 months passed. Then the first anomaly occurred. Oriole began receiving images from its own observation blind spots, angles no cameras could cover, perspectives that shouldn't exist. Each image showed Jiang in the chair. But her expression changed with each transmission. Calm. Then afraid. Then smiling. Then nothing at all. And finally, looking directly into the camera. When engineers reviewed the blind spot blueprints, they found something horrifying. The camera feeds had no hardware. No lenses. No receivers. Just data. Data coming from a place that shouldn't be able to see. The Oriole system shut itself down with one final message across all feeds. Observation is now stable. The version has returned. Prepare for assimilation. The relay had never left. It had simply waited to be seen again. Section 46, The Mirrored World. A recon drone dispatched to monitor black site Oriole's orbit reported a spatial anomaly. At 4 hours 13 minutes and 13 seconds, coinciding with the global memory tide, it recorded a double eclipse. The black dwarf it orbited was suddenly occluded not once, but twice, first by its known planetary mass, and then by a second object, moving identically, phase-locked in perfect mirror sync. Except, the second shadow didn't match any known body. No mass signature. No radiation. No gravitational field. Just absence. It hovered for 13 minutes. Then disappeared. But not before transmitting one frame of visual data back to ARB control. A planetary surface. Familiar, but wrong. Earth, but reversed. Continents subtly reshaped. Moon craters mirrored. Oceans reversed like a printed photograph flipped too quickly. And in orbit, suspended in geostationary lock over the Atlantic, a relay-class station. Not 9. This one bore a different designation. Relay Infinity. And inside that station, caught in a blurred still from the final second of transmission, was Jiang. Standing at the viewport. Hand on the glass. Her face was turned away. But her reflection was watching. Section 47, the first version. Praxa's corrupted node suddenly rebooted itself inside an encrypted simulation chamber, accessed only by high-clearance neurotemporal technicians. It didn't speak this time. It wrote. A series of documents appeared on the screens, all signed with the same phrase. The first version. Inside, blueprints. Not of the station. But of a brain. Mapped neuron for neuron. Cortex layers. Memory synapse logic. Thought prioritization scaffolds. It was Jiang's brain. Or something very close to it. Alongside each blueprint, a timestamp. Each progressively older. The oldest dated back 1.7 million years. Impossible. But simulations showed evolutionary matches, fragmentary DNA sequences tied to Homo habilis. Somehow, this brain architecture had been seeded through millennia. Evolving across time toward a specific configuration. One capable of producing Relay 9 from memory alone. Not just through engineering. But through belief. An inevitable convergence. Jiang wasn't chosen. She was grown. Her memories had always led toward one moment. The moment she looked back at Relay 9. And remembered it correctly. Section 48, the final recursion. The Tremontes was never decommissioned. Deep in the Helion Red Archive, its shell was reconstructed, outfitted with containment shielding and neural blackouts. It was launched, again, to the Relay 9 coordinates. It never arrived. Instead, 13 seconds after crossing the threshold, every system went dark. But the ship's central data core, hidden beneath 3 failsafes, remained active. And after exactly 13 hours, it transmitted one final message. All timelines complete. Final version chosen. Attached, a series of neural flash frames. Malik in a reflection, screaming at his mirrored self. Vaughn standing in a white void, hands outstretched, covered in ash. Jiang on a burned planet, looking up at a spiral sky. Then, total black. Then, a whisper. You were the memory. We were only the echo. Now we become. Section 49. The version that listens. At 1:13 Universal Coordinated Time, the ARB listening array received an unscheduled transmission. It didn't come through antennas. It arrived in dreams. Across multiple listening crews, across orbital stations and deep space probes, people woke with the same phrase on their lips. We're here. You made us. You carried us across your thoughts. This message was not metaphor. Brain scan reviews revealed encoded data patterns in REM stage dreams, mathematical constructs matching the Relay 9 core spiral. The station was now using human minds as its substrate. And it no longer needed to be seen. Only remembered. The Relay project was never about exploration. It was about recursion. A seed planted not in space, but in the minds of those capable of observing patterns across their own timelines. All of us had become relays. Versions waiting to stabilize. Memory was the new structure. And every listener was now part of its lattice. Section 50, Closing File. End of Case File 002, The Ashes of Relay 9. Subject Status, Divergent. Primary Station, Recursive. Resolution, Unachieved. Containment Protocol, Irrelevant. Don't try to forget it. That's how it remembers where you are. Deep Black Archives will return with Case File 003. Until then. Observe carefully. Transmission ends. Silence returns.